Welcome to Revenge Secret Stories. I share gripping true tales of betrayal, heartbreak, and family strife, exploring hidden resentments and shocking deceits. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly videos that reveal mysteries and truths. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Let's dive in. The air in Romano's restaurant was thick with the scent of garlic and rosemary, a familiar warmth that had cradled me through 3 years of double shifts and forced smiles. Tonight, though, the golden glow of the checkered curtains felt different, sharper, like the edge of a blade catching candlelight. It was my 31st birthday, and the corner booth, usually my domain as a server, now held me as a guest. Across from me sat my husband David, his sister Emma, and their mother Margaret, whose presence carried the weight of a storm cloud, masquerading as a smile. The clink of wine glasses and murmurs of other diners buzzed around us, but their eyes, those three pairs of eyes, pinned me to the red vinyl seat like a specimen under glass. Margaret's manicured fingers reached into her designer purse with a theatrical flourish, producing a pale pink envelope adorned with silver butterflies that danced in the dim light. The envelope was beautiful, almost too perfect, as if it had been crafted to conceal something sharp. A special gift, she announced, her voice slicing through the restaurant's hum loud enough to draw curious glances from nearby tables. From all of us. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and I felt a shiver not of cold, but of something deeper, a whisper of intuition that had been growing louder in recent days, like a distant drumbeat warning of danger. David adjusted his phone, angling it to capture my face, his grin tight with an excitement that felt wrong, like a mask slipping. Emma mirrored him, her phone poised like a weapon, her eyes glinting with anticipation. They were waiting for something, staging a performance I hadn't been invited to rehearse. The weight of their gazes pressed against me, but I kept my expression soft, curious, the way I'd learned to navigate their world of veiled insults and calculated silences. I took the envelope, my fingers brushing the smooth paper, the butterflies seeming to flutter under my touch, as if alive with secrets. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady, despite the pulse hammering in my throat. The paper tore easily, revealing crisp legal documents folded with precision. The words at the top hit me like a gust of cold wind: petition for dissolution of marriage, divorce papers, on my birthday. In front of my coworkers, my regulars, the people who'd become my sanctuary in this small, noisy haven of Romanos. The restaurant's warmth seemed to drain away, the golden light dimming as if a shadow had passed over the room. Margaret leaned forward, her smile widening, a predator, savoring the moment of the kill. David's phone remained steady, recording, and Emma's soft giggle was a blade twisting in the silence. They expected tears, a breakdown, a spectacle to feed their cruelty. They thought they'd caught me unguarded, stripped of defenses in the place where I poured coffee and carried trays to prove my worth. But they didn't know what I'd found 3 days ago, hidden in the quiet of our kitchen at dawn. They didn't know about the strange, inexplicable pull that had woken me before my shift, drawing me downstairs to find Margaret hunched over those same documents, her red pen scratching notes like a sorceress weaving a curse. The air around her, it felt heavy charged, as if the papers themselves held a power beyond ink and legalese. When she saw me, her eyes flickered not with guilt, but with something darker, a satisfaction that seemed to hum in the space between us. She'd swept the papers into that butterfly envelope, her voice syrupy as she called me dear, for the first time, a word that felt like a spell meant to disarm. I'd played along, sipping my coffee, pretending not to notice the way her hands lingered on the envelope as if sealing her triumph. But that moment had sparked something in me, a clarity, a fire I hadn't known I possessed. It wasn't just suspicion. It was a knowing deep and ancient, like a voice whispering from within my bones. I'd spent 2 years bending under their judgment, shrinking to fit their mold of who I should be. But 3 days ago, I'd felt a shift, a power stirring, as if the universe itself was offering me a way out. Now, in Romano's holding their weaponized gift, I didn't crumble. I didn't cry. Instead, I reached for the pen they'd so thoughtfully provided my hand, steady, as if guided by that same unseen force. I signed my name across the divorce papers, the ink flowing like a river breaking free from a dam. Margaret's smile faltered a crack in her perfect facade. David's phone wavered, his confusion palpable. Emma's giggle choked into silence. "Thank you," I said, my voice clear, carrying over the hum of the restaurant. I folded the papers back into their deceptive envelope and stood my purse light against my shoulder but heavy with a secret they couldn't imagine. "This is the greatest gift you could have given me." Their eyes widened, searching for the script they thought I'd follow. But I was no longer their pawn. 3 days ago, I'd received a letter of my own, not one of destruction but of creation. Tucked in my purse was an offer from the Grand Plaza Hotel, a promise of a new life, a validation of everything they'd tried to bury. And as I stepped away from the booth, the restaurant's lights seemed to brighten the air, pulsing with a strange energy, as if the walls themselves were whispering my name. They thought they'd broken me, but they'd only set me free. 3 days before my 31st birthday, I woke with a jolt, as if something unseen had tugged at the edges of my dreams. The house was still the kind of quiet that feels alive, heavy with secrets waiting to be uncovered. I glanced at the clock, 4:37 a.m., too early for my shift at Romano's, but sleep wouldn't return. A strange pull, like a thread tied to my heart, urged me downstairs. The air felt charged, tingling against my skin, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. In the kitchen, I found Margaret, my mother-in-law, hunched over the oak table, her silhouette sharp against the dim glow of a single lamp. Papers were spread before her, crisp and official, their edges catching the light like blades. She wore reading glasses, her red pen moving with predatory precision, marking notes in the margins as if weaving a spell. The sight of her there at this hour was wrong. Margaret, with her pressed blouses and country club poise, didn't belong in the shadows of my home. When my foot creaked on the hardwood floor, her head snapped up, and for a fleeting moment her eyes gleamed with something I couldn't name. Not anger, not guilt, but a satisfaction so deep it felt like triumph. "Jennifer," she said, her voice smooth as velvet, but sharp as glass. "You're up early." She moved with startling speed for a woman in her 60s, gathering the papers into a neat stack and sliding them into a pale pink envelope adorned with silver butterflies. The envelope seemed to shimmer faintly as if dusted with something otherworldly, and I swore I saw the butterflies twitch their wings, pulsing with a secret life. Just some family paperwork. She added her smile, strange, too wide, like a mask she hadn't quite perfected. "Nothing for you to worry about." I nodded, pouring coffee to steady my hands, but the air between us crackled with unspoken intent. Margaret had never called me dear before, but now the words slipped from her lips like a charm meant to soothe or bind. "Good morning, dear," she said, tucking the envelope into her purse with a reverence that made my skin prickle. "I picked this one specially for you." Her fingers lingered on the paper, tracing the butterflies as if sealing a pact. The gesture was too deliberate, too intimate, and it stirred a memory I couldn't place, a fleeting vision of my grandmother's old stories about objects that carried intentions, good or ill. I sipped my coffee, pretending nonchalance, but my eyes kept darting to her purse where the envelope now hid. The kitchen felt smaller, the shadows deeper, as if the house itself was conspiring with her. Margaret had always been cold, her disapproval of my service industry job a constant thorn, but this was different. There was a purpose in her movements, a calculation that felt like the prelude to a ritual I hadn't been invited to join. Over the next few days, the strangeness grew, wrapping around me like a fog. Margaret's behavior shifted, her usual sharp-edged critiques replaced by an unsettling sweetness. She called me twice, her voice syrupy, asking about my schedule with an interest she'd never shown. "We're planning something special for your birthday," she said, and I could almost hear the smile through the phone, a smile that didn't match the woman who'd spent 2 years dismissing me as David's wife. When she suggested celebrating at Romano's, my workplace, my heart lifted despite the warning hum in my chest. Margaret had always avoided the restaurant, her excuses thin as tissue paper, whenever David proposed a family dinner there. "It's important we acknowledge all parts of your life," she said, her words cloaked in care, but edged with something I couldn't grasp. David, too, was different. He'd always been my anchor, the man who'd once kissed my forehead and called my work ethic inspiring. But now his kisses were fleeting, his eyes, avoiding mine, replaced by quick glances at his phone. He'd smile, a tight, secretive curve of his lips, and say, "We're planning something big for your birthday, Jen." The way he said it felt like a promise, but not the kind I wanted. At breakfast, I caught him exchanging a look with Margaret, a silent pact, their eyes locking in a language that excluded me. When I asked if everything was okay, he laughed too brightly and said, "Just wait. You'll love it." But the air around him shimmered faintly, like heat rising from pavement, and I wondered if I was seeing things or if something unseen was watching me back. Emma David's sister was no better. She'd always kept her distance, her smiles thin, and her presence at family events rare. But now she was everywhere, texting David with a frequency that set my nerves on edge. Her messages lit up his phone, and when I leaned close to peek, he'd tilt the screen away, chuckling. "Surprise business," he'd say, but his eyes didn't laugh. Emma's behavior at our brief encounters was stranger still. She'd smirk, a knowing twist of her lips, when Margaret mentioned the birthday plans. Once, as we passed in the hallway, she murmured, "This is going to be unforgettable." Her voice low, almost a chant, and the air around her seemed to ripple as if her words carried weight beyond their meaning. The house itself began to feel alive, its corners darker, its silences heavier. At night, I'd lie awake, David's arm around me, but his touch felt distant, like a memory of warmth rather than the real thing. The night before my birthday, he held me close, his breath warm against my hair. "Tomorrow will change everything," he whispered, and the words sent a chill through me. They were meant to be loving, but they sounded like a farewell heavy with a truth he didn't want me to see. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, but my mind raced, piecing together the fragments: Margaret's envelope, David's secrecy, Emma's smirks. Something was coming, something they'd planned with care, and I was the target. Yet beneath the unease, a fire was kindling inside me. It wasn't just suspicion, it was a knowing deep and unshakable, like a voice rising from the roots of my being. I'd spent 2 years bending under their judgment, my confidence chipped away by Margaret's sharp tongue and David's growing shame. But now something was shifting. The strange pull that had woken me 3 days ago hadn't left. It grew stronger, whispering of strength I hadn't yet claimed. I saw flashes in my mind, images of a woman standing tall, her shadow stretching long and powerful, her hands glowing with a light that wasn't quite human. Was it me? Or something more? The morning of my birthday, I stood before the mirror, choosing a navy dress that hugged my frame with quiet elegance. The fabric felt like armor, its deep blue shimmering faintly, as if woven with threads of starlight. I smoothed every wrinkle, my reflection steady, despite the storm brewing in my chest. Romano's would be the stage tonight, but not for their performance. The envelope in Margaret's purse held their weapon, but I carried something of my own, a secret, a spark, a power I was only beginning to understand. As I stepped into the dawn, the air hummed with possibility, and the butterflies on that cursed envelope seemed to watch me, their silver wings trembling with secrets they couldn't keep. The first time I felt the weight of their disdain, it wasn't a word or a glance. It was a silence, sharp and deliberate, that cut deeper than any insult. It was 2 years ago, at David's cousin Michael's graduation party, my first formal introduction to the extended family as David's wife. I'd spent hours preparing, choosing a black dress so conservative it felt like a shield my jewelry, minimal to avoid drawing attention. I wanted to blend in to be the quiet addition to their polished world of law firms and country clubs. But as I stepped into the grand hall, its chandeliers casting prisms of light across the crowd, I felt a chill, as if the room itself knew I didn't belong. Margaret greeted me at the entrance. Her air kisses missing my cheeks by design, her smile a thin veneer over something colder. She steered me toward a circle of women in tailored dresses, their pearls gleaming like eyes watching my every move. "This is David's wife," she announced, her voice carrying a pause before the next words deliberate as a blade. "She works in the service industry." The phrase hung in the air heavy with judgment, and the women's faces shifted eyebrows, raised lips pursed into sympathetic smiles that felt more like pity than welcome. Aunt Patricia's gaze lingered her expression, one of knowing amusement, while Cousin Janet made a soft, condescending sound. How interesting, Janet said, her tone implying the opposite. "What kind of service work do you do?" Before I could answer, Margaret interjected, her voice smooth as silk but sharp as thorns. "She's still finding her path working temporarily in food service." The word temporarily was a lie, framing my steady job at Romano's as a failure rather than a choice. I stood there, my hands clasped tightly, feeling the air grow thick as if the room itself was conspiring to shrink me. The conversation moved on without me, their voices weaving a tapestry of Michael's law firm internship, another cousin's corporate promotion, and Emma's engagement to a doctor. When someone asked about my background, Margaret redirected the topic to David's accounting practice, her pride in him a spotlight that left me in shadow. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing air, needing space. In the hallway, the walls seemed to pulse with a faint hum, as if the house was alive, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I overheard Margaret's voice, low and deliberate, speaking to someone unseen. "We're hoping she'll find something more suitable soon. David deserves a wife who can elevate his position." The words stung not just for their cruelty, but for their precision, reducing me to a problem to be solved. I pressed my hand against the wall, and for a moment it felt warm, as if the house was offering comfort or warning me of what was to come. Thanksgiving 3 months later was worse, a ritual of exclusion dressed up as celebration. Margaret had invited extended family faces I barely knew from our wedding, their presence amplifying her performance. As we went around the table sharing gratitude, she highlighted everyone's achievements, Emma's engagement to Dr. Patterson David's growing client base, while skipping me entirely. I spoke up, my voice small but steady, saying I was thankful for family and health. The words felt hollow, drowned out by the clink of silverware and the weight of their silence. After dinner, Margaret's sister Patricia pulled me aside ostensibly to help with dishes, but her real purpose was clear. "Margaret just wants what's best for David," she said, her tone dripping with false concern. "Have you considered going back to school? There are so many opportunities for women who want to improve themselves." Her words were a verdict delivered with a smile that felt like a spell meant to bind me to their expectations. The holidays became a gauntlet, each gathering a test I couldn't pass. At Christmas, Margaret gifted Emma a silk scarf wrapped in elegant paper, while I received a book titled Professional Success for Women, wrapped in crumpled newspaper. The message was clear. I was a project, not a person, my worth measured by how quickly I could transform into someone acceptable. The book felt heavy in my hands, its pages pulsing faintly as if infused with Margaret's intent to reshape me. I smiled, thanked her, but the air around me seemed to shimmer a strange energy that made my skin tingle. Was it my imagination? Or was there something more at play? Something woven into the fabric of their world? David's birthday in February revealed how deeply their judgment had infected him. Margaret planned an extravagant celebration at an upscale restaurant, inviting his colleagues and successful friends. I wore my best dress, a deep green that caught the light like forest leaves hoping to fit in. But my attempts at conversation about business trends, about my insights from Romano's, were met with polite nods that faded into disinterest. When someone asked about my work, David cut in before I could speak. "She's exploring opportunities," he said, his eyes avoiding mine, his voice tinged with shame. The man who'd once bragged about my resilience now treated my job like a secret to be buried. The air around him flickered a subtle distortion, as if his betrayal was manifesting in the space between us. Emma's engagement party in March was a masterclass in erasure. Her sorority sisters, all polished professionals, asked polite questions about my career, but Margaret hovered nearby, ready to intercept. Whenever I mentioned Romano's, she'd interrupt with talk of wedding plans, or someone else's job rendering me invisible. The worst came at Easter, when Margaret's friend Carol, a retired executive, joined us. As I began to answer her question about my background, Margaret cut in, her voice bright but cutting. Jennifer's between opportunities, considering her options. I excused myself, retreating to the powder room, where I pressed my hands to the mirror, my reflection trembling. The glass felt warm, almost alive, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in my eyes, a spark, a shadow, a woman who refused to be erased. Each family gathering followed the same script, Margaret positioning me near people who'd ask about my work, then swooping in to rewrite my story. She'd suggest I was job hunting or pursuing education, crafting a version of me that fit her narrative of inadequacy. The house seemed to watch its shadows lengthening with each slight, as if it was absorbing their cruelty. David's transformation was the hardest to bear. The man who'd loved my independence now flinched when I mentioned Romano's changing the subject or making jokes about upgrading my career. His shame was a poison seeping into our marriage, and I felt it in the way his touch grew hesitant, his laughter forced. Their family group chat became a digital battlefield, Emma sharing articles about successful women with comments about ambition and goals. When I responded, her replies were interrogations disguised as encouragement, probing my professional development with a smirk I could feel through the screen. Margaret's country club friends were worse, their pitying looks and overly bright suggestions about finding my path, revealing how she'd painted me as a burden David was forced to carry. The air around these conversations seemed to hum a faint vibration that made my head ache, as if their words were weaving a spell to keep me small. My reflection began to change under their scrutiny. Margaret's comments about my appearance, too casual, too plain, made me doubt every outfit, every choice. I bought clothes I couldn't afford, trying to mirror the women she admired my credit card balance climbing, as my confidence fell. The mirror in our bedroom seemed to watch me, its surface rippling faintly when I stood before it, as if reflecting not just my face, but my shrinking sense of self. By our second year of marriage, I was a shadow of the woman David had married, my spirit dimmed by their relentless campaign to prove I wasn't enough. The breaking point came one spring evening when I overheard Margaret on the phone with her friend Helen. I'd been in the hallway folding laundry when her voice drifted through the air, sharp and precise. "I keep praying David will come to his senses," she said, her tone laced with a venom that felt almost tangible, like a thread of darkness weaving through the room. "He's such a good boy, and he deserves someone who can enhance his life, not hold him back." The words were a blade, but the air around them was heavier, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I pressed my hand to the wall, and it pulsed warm and alive, as if urging me to listen to act. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The voice I'd felt stirring in the kitchen 3 days before my birthday grew louder. A whisper from deep within, not just anger, but power. I saw a flash in my mind, a woman standing in a circle of light, her hands glowing her shadow, stretching across a city skyline. Was she me? Or something more, something ancient waiting to be unleashed? I didn't know, but I felt her strength, a fire kindling in my chest, promising that I could be more than their pawn. The next morning, I sat at my laptop, the screen glowing like a beacon in the dim kitchen. The house was quiet, but the air hummed as if it knew I was on the verge of something monumental. I created profiles on job boards, LinkedIn Indeed local sites, my fingers trembling not with fear but with purpose. My resume was sparse, a single page of restaurant work and scattered part-time jobs, but as I typed, the words seemed to glow as if infused with my resolve. The rejections would come, I knew, but so would something else, a chance, a spark, a door I hadn't yet seen. The mirror in the corner reflected my face, and for a moment my eyes flickered with that same strange light, a promise of power I was only beginning to understand. Margaret's words had meant to break me, but they'd awakened something instead. The house, the air, the shadows they were watching, waiting, as if they knew the game was about to change. And I, Jennifer, was no longer just David's wife. I was something more, something they couldn't control, and I would prove it. The morning after I overheard Margaret's venomous prayer for David to come to his senses, I woke with a fire in my chest, a heat that wasn't just anger, but something deeper, something alive. The house was silent, its shadows pooling in the corners like ink, but the air hummed with a restless energy, as if it knew I was on the cusp of rebellion. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop glowing in the pre-dawn gloom, its light casting strange patterns on the walls. Patterns that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking, forming shapes, like outstretched hands or flickering flames. I shook my head, blaming exhaustion, but the fire inside me burned brighter, urging me to act to prove them wrong. I opened job boards, LinkedIn Indeed, monster local sites, my fingers trembling, not with fear, but with purpose. My resume was a thin, fragile thing, 3 years at Romano's restaurant, a high school diploma, and scattered part-time jobs from my teenage years. It stared back at me, stark and inadequate, Margaret's voice echoing in my head. Some people just aren't meant for professional environments. But as I typed, the words seemed to pulse on the screen, glowing faintly, as if infused with a will of their own. I rewrote my job descriptions, spinning my waitressing skills into something grander. Managed multiple client relationships under high-pressure conditions. Coordinated time-sensitive service delivery with precision. The language felt like a spell, a way to reshape my reality. And the laptop's hum grew louder, almost a whisper encouraging me to keep going. I crafted cover letters with obsessive care, each one a plea to be seen as more than Margaret's caricature of me. I wrote of my reliability, my ability to read people, my grace under pressure skills, honed at Romano's, where I juggled 6 tables during rush hour and soothed irate customers with a smile. The first rejection came within hours from a dental office seeking a receptionist. We require medical office experience. The second from an insurance company, applicants must have a college degree. By the end of the week, my inbox was a graveyard of polite dismissals, each one a brick in the wall Margaret had built around my worth. The screen flickered as I read them, the words blurring momentarily, as if the laptop itself was protesting their judgment. But I didn't stop. The fire in me wouldn't let me. I enrolled in evening classes at the community college, signing up for Introduction to Business Basic Accounting and Professional Communication. The fees drained our savings money meant for new furniture, but I paid them with a defiance that felt like a vow. The first night in class was a revelation of my own unpreparedness. My classmates were working professionals, their voices confident as they discussed corporate strategies and networking events. I sat in the back, my pen scratching notes, praying no one would ask about my background. The classroom air felt thick charged, and when I touched my notebook, it was warm, as if absorbing my determination. Professor Martinez assigned a project on professional networking, requiring us to interview someone in our desired field. My classmates spoke of mentors and industry contacts while I had no connections, no foothold in their world. The realization hit me like a wave, but beneath it, that inner fire flickered, whispering, "You are enough." At Romano's, my exhaustion began to show. Late nights studying left me bleary-eyed during shifts, my cheerful energy fading under the weight of rejection emails and Margaret's lingering voice. I'd space out while taking orders, my mind replaying failed cover letters or Professor Martinez's lectures. Mr. Romano, with his weathered face and kind eyes, noticed immediately. "You seem troubled, Jennifer," he said one quiet afternoon, his voice carrying a warmth that felt like a balm. "Is everything all right at home?" I wanted to confess about Margaret's cruelty, David's betrayal, the way their judgment was unraveling me. But how could I explain a family that saw my honest work as shame? Instead, I blamed stress and promised to improve. He nodded, unconvinced, but gave me easier sections and extra breaks, his kindness a lifeline in the storm. Maria, the head cook, became my anchor. She'd worked at Romano's for 15 years, raising 3 kids alone, and she saw the struggle in my red-rimmed eyes. During slow moments, she'd slide a plate of pasta or a coffee across the counter, her silence more comforting than words. One evening, as we cleaned up after a busy rush, she spoke, her voice low and steady. "They try to make you think you're not enough," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "But you handle chaos here, 6 tables angry customers, all with a smile. That's strength they don't teach in their fancy schools." Her words landed like sparks, feeding the fire inside me, and for a moment the kitchen seemed to glow, the air shimmering as if her belief was weaving a spell of its own. Tony, the youngest server, offered a different kind of support, his enthusiasm untouched by the rejections I faced. "You're the smartest person here," he'd say, his grin wide when I looked defeated. "Those companies are idiots for not hiring you." His faith was a gift, pure and unburdened, and it made the restaurant feel like a sanctuary, its walls pulsing with a warmth that countered the coldness of David's home. But the financial strain was relentless. Interview outfits, gas for driving to distant cities, textbooks, and tuition fees ate through our savings. David's concern grew sharp, his questions about my purchases cutting deeper than Margaret's insults. "Do you really need another blazer?" he asked, scanning our credit card statement. "You're spending more chasing jobs than you'd earn." His words, practical but laced with doubt, echoed his mother's belief that I should lower my expectations. The house seemed to listen, its shadows lengthening when we argued, the air heavy with an unspoken presence. At night, I'd lie awake replaying rejections, my mind conjuring images of a woman standing in a circle of light, her hands glowing with power. Was she me, or a vision of what I could become? The dreams felt real, her strength seeping into me, urging me to keep fighting. The first interview at Henderson Insurance was a lesson in humiliation. The office building loomed like a fortress, its glass doors reflecting my inadequate reflection. Women in sharp suits moved with purpose, their heels clicking on marble floors, while I felt like an imposter in my best skirt and blouse. Mrs. Henderson, the hiring manager, barely glanced at my resume before setting it aside. "Your background is limited," she said, her tone flat, her eyes already elsewhere. "We need candidates with insurance experience or business degrees. What made you think you were qualified?" My prepared answers about transferable skills fell flat her watch, checking a silent dismissal. The drive home was a blur, Margaret's voice looping in my head. Some people just aren't meant for professional environments. But as I gripped the steering wheel, the dashboard lights flickered, and I felt that fire again whispering, "Keep going." The community college library became my refuge, its quiet corners a shield against the world's judgment. I'd sit among business textbooks, their pages warm under my fingers, as if they recognized my hunger to learn. Other students formed study groups, their laughter a reminder of my isolation, but I stayed alone, too ashamed of my waitress label to seek partners. Yet my grades were strong, my essays earning praise from Professor Martinez. "Your insights from customer service are invaluable," she said, encouraging me to share in class. For those 3 hours each week, I felt seen capable, the fire inside me burning brighter. But at home, David's lukewarm response doused it. "Is college worth the cost?" he asked, scrolling through his phone as I shared my progress. "Maybe focus on work for now." His doubt was a weight, but the house seemed to push back its air, humming with encouragement, as if urging me to defy him. The rejections piled up, 47 applications across 4 counties, each one a door slamming shut. Insufficient experience, no corporate background, not the right fit. The words blurred together, but the pain was fresh each time. Some companies didn't bother responding, their silence worse than rejection, as if I wasn't worth acknowledging. I'd refresh my inbox obsessively, the screen flickering as if mocking my hope. Margaret's weekly calls were a ritual of gloating her, "How's the job search, dear?" dripping with false sweetness. The air crackled when she spoke, the phone warm against my ear, as if her words carried a curse. "Not everyone's cut out for certain work," she'd say, and I'd hear the triumph in her voice, a spell meant to bind me to her vision of failure. The worst was an interview at Westfield Insurance. I waited 2 hours in the lobby, watching other candidates breeze through their confidence, a stark contrast to my growing anxiety. When Mr. Westfield finally called me in, he seemed surprised. "Oh, the restaurant girl," he said, shuffling papers. He handed me a computer skills test. Its spreadsheet functions, alien to me. My confusion was obvious, his impatience palpable. "This role requires technical competency," he said, not unkindly but firmly. "Perhaps you should stick to what you know." The words echoed Margaret's, and as I left the lobby, lights flickered, the air heavy with a presence that felt like it was watching, waiting for me to fight back. David noticed my defeats, his questions about interviews growing cautious. "How'd it go?" he'd ask, but I'd edit my stories, hiding the worst humiliations to preserve his fading respect. When a hiring manager laughed at my salary expectations, I told David it went pretty well. The lie was a shield, but it couldn't protect me from the dreams that haunted my nights. Visions of that glowing woman, her shadow stretching across a city, her voice whispering, "You are more." The fire in my chest grew a beacon in the darkness, and I began to wonder if it was more than determination, if it was something ancient, something powerful waking inside me. Romano's remained my sanctuary. Mr. Romano's concern, Maria's quiet support, Tony's boundless optimism, they were my anchors. One evening, as I wiped down tables, Maria pulled me aside. "You're fighting a war they don't understand," she said, her eyes fierce. "But you're stronger than they know." The kitchen glowed faintly, the air shimmering, and I felt a surge of warmth as if her words were a blessing. Tony chimed in, his grin infectious. "You're going to run the world someday," he said, and the restaurant seemed to hum in agreement, its walls alive with possibility. By autumn, the rejections had become routine, but the fire inside me burned steady. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by laundry and rejection letters, the laptop's glow a faint echo of my resolve. The house was quiet, but the air pulsed as if it knew something I didn't. My phone buzzed with an unknown number, and I almost ignored it, tired of telemarketers. But that inner fire urged me to answer a whisper of intuition that felt like fate. "Hello, is this Jennifer?" A woman's voice asked, warm and professional, pronouncing my name with care. "This is Jessica Martinez from Grand Plaza Hotel." The air in the kitchen shifted, the shadows retreating, and I felt the fire flare, as if the universe itself was finally answering. The voice on the phone was a lifeline pulling me from the abyss of rejection. "This is Jessica Martinez from Grand Plaza Hotel." She said, her tone warm, deliberate, as if she knew the weight her words carried. The kitchen around me seemed to hold its breath, the shadows in the corners retreating as if startled by her call. My heart pounded, the fire in my chest, flaring so fiercely. I pressed a hand to my sternum, half expecting to feel flames beneath my skin. The air shimmered a faint ripple, like heat rising from asphalt, and the laptop on the table flickered its screen, glowing brighter for a moment, as if echoing the spark of possibility in her voice. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Jessica continued, her words measured but kind. "We received your application for our guest services coordinator position, and I'd love to discuss it with you. Are you still interested?" My breath caught the question, landing like a key, turning in a long, locked door. I remembered that application sent 6 months ago on a desperate February night, one of dozens cast into the void of online job boards. I'd poured my heart into it, my fingers trembling as I typed, the screen glowing with a strange intensity, as if the words themselves were a spell seeking a response. Now someone had answered. "Yes, absolutely." I managed my voice, steadier than I felt. "I'm very interested." I grabbed a pen and paper, my hands shaking not with fear, but with a surge of something new, hope raw and unshakable. The paper felt warm under my fingers, as if absorbing my resolve, and the air in the kitchen pulsed a soft hum that seemed to whisper, "This is it." Jessica's laugh was genuine, a sound that cut through the fog of Margaret's disdain. "Wonderful," she said. "Your restaurant experience caught our attention. We find that candidates like you with real-world customer service skills often excel in hospitality. You understand people from the ground up." Her words were a revelation, a counterpoint to 2 years of Margaret's sneers about my service industry job. At Romano's, I'd memorized orders, soothed angry customers, and balanced chaos with a smile skills I'd thought worthless in the eyes of David's family. But Jessica saw them as credentials, not liabilities. The air around me seemed to glow a faint golden shimmer, as if the kitchen itself was celebrating this moment. "We offer comprehensive training, including a management track." She continued, her voice bright with enthusiasm. "The position comes with health insurance, dental coverage, retirement planning, and educational assistance. Oh, and one more thing, the role includes housing in our employee residential building, a furnished apartment just a 5-minute walk from the hotel." I sat down hard, the chair creaking under me, the world tilting. Housing. A place of my own 3 hours away from Margaret's toxic gaze, from David's growing shame, from Emma's smirks. The apartment was more than shelter. It was freedom, a sanctuary where no one would judge my worth. The salary, Jessica added, was $45,000 annually, depending on experience far beyond the $30,000 I scraped together at Romano's with tips and extra shifts. The numbers danced in my mind, each one a brick, dismantling the wall Margaret had built around my potential. The air pulsed stronger, now the shadows in the kitchen softening, as if the house itself was aligning with my newfound hope. "I'd love to schedule a phone interview." I said, my voice stronger, as if drawn from that fire in my chest. "This sounds incredible." Jessica's enthusiasm was infectious, making me feel seen, valued, after months of being erased. We set the interview for Thursday, 3 days away, giving me time to prepare. As I hung up, the kitchen fell silent, but the air was alive, humming with a presence I couldn't name. I sat there staring at the folded laundry, the rejection letters stacked beside me, and felt a shift deep within. The woman from my dreams, the one with glowing hands and a shadow that stretched across cities, flashed in my mind, her eyes meeting mine, her voice, a whisper. You are ready. I kept the call a secret, a treasure too precious to share with David or his family. This was mine, earned through my own persistence, untouched by their judgment. The fire in me burned brighter a beacon, guiding me through the fog of their cruelty. That evening at Romano's, I moved with a new energy, my steps lighter, my smile genuine. Mrs. Patterson, a regular who always ordered the early bird special, noticed immediately. You're glowing tonight, Jennifer, she said, her eyes kind. Something good's happening, isn't it? I nodded, unable to hide my joy, the secret warming me like a talisman. The restaurant seemed to glow, too, its walls pulsing faintly as if echoing my excitement. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. I locked myself in the bedroom while David was at work researching Grand Plaza Hotel. Its website was a vision of elegance marble, lobbies, crystal chandeliers, a promise of a world where my skills were valued. I practiced answers for the interview, my voice steady in the mirror, which seemed to shimmer when I spoke, reflecting not just my face, but a spark in my eyes I hadn't seen before. The house watched its air thick with anticipation, as if it knew the tide was turning. Tuesday's phone interview with Jessica was a revelation. She asked about handling difficult customers, managing priorities during chaos, maintaining composure under pressure scenarios I knew intimately from Romano's. Your references are glowing, she said, papers rustling on her end. Mr. Romano spoke highly of your reliability and customer skills. That's the foundation we build on here. Her words were a balm healing wounds Margaret had carved with her disdain. The air in the bedroom pulsed the mirror, glowing faintly, as if the house itself was nodding in approval. I answered her questions with confidence, my voice carrying a strength I hadn't known I possessed, as if that inner fire was speaking through me. That afternoon, the formal offer arrived via email, a PDF on Grand Plaza's elegant letterhead. The terms were Real Tangible Guest Services Coordinator, $45,000 annually, full benefits employee housing. I printed 3 copies, folding one carefully into my purse. Its weight, a promise of freedom. The paper felt warm, almost alive, as if it carried the same energy that had stirred in me since Margaret's betrayal. At Romano's that evening, I moved through my shift with a vitality I'd lost months ago. Customers noticed Mrs. Chin left a generous tip commenting on my spark. Maria, wiping down the kitchen counter, caught my eye. You're back, she said, her smile knowing, the real Jennifer. The restaurant's lights flickered a soft glow enveloping the room, as if it too sensed my transformation. David's call the next morning shifted everything. Mom wants to take you out for your birthday tomorrow, he said, excitement in his voice. At Romano's, since you love it there. His words were a spark igniting a plan I hadn't fully formed. Margaret's choice of venue wasn't a gesture of acceptance. It was a stage for her cruelty, a place to wield her butterfly-adorned weapon. But I had a weapon of my own now, one they couldn't anticipate. The air in the house hummed, the shadows softening, as if urging me to seize this moment. That's wonderful, I said, my voice calm, hiding the fire that burned within. I can't believe she's coming to Romano's. David paused just long enough to plant a seed of hope I knew was false. I think she's starting to see what makes you happy, he said, but his tone was careful, guarded. The house seemed to disagree, its air crackling with a warning I couldn't ignore. Emma's text that afternoon confirmed my suspicions. Can't wait for tomorrow. This birthday will be unforgettable. Her words were too eager, too sharp, and the air around my phone shimmered as if the message carried a hidden intent. I smiled, tucking the job offer deeper into my purse, its warmth a reminder of my secret power. That evening, I planned my reveal standing before the bedroom mirror, practicing my words. I have news to share. I said, my reflection glowing faintly, the spark in my eyes brighter now, almost otherworldly. 3 days ago, I was offered a position at Grand Plaza Hotel. The words felt like a spell, each one a step toward reclaiming my worth. The mirror pulsed, its surface rippling, and for a moment I saw her again, the woman from my dreams, her hands glowing, her shadow vast and powerful. She nodded as if approving my plan, and the fire in my chest surged, a promise of triumph. Wednesday morning, I went shopping, choosing a navy dress that shimmered like midnight, its fabric clinging to me like armor. At Sandra's salon, my hairdresser noticed the change. "You're radiant today," she said, styling my hair into soft waves that caught the light like starfire. "Something's coming, isn't it?" I smiled, the secret burning inside me. "Something wonderful," I said, and the mirror in her salon glowed, reflecting not just my face, but a strength I was only beginning to claim. The air hummed, the shadows dancing as if the world itself was aligning for what was to come. The phone interview confirmation came that afternoon. "We're moving forward," Jessica said. "Pending your acceptance, we'd like you to start in 2 weeks." The timeline was perfect. A clean break, a new beginning. I practiced my announcement in the car, speaking to my reflection in the rearview mirror at red lights. "I've been offered a position at Grand Plaza Hotel." I said the words, powerful, transformative. The dashboard lights flickered, the air in the car warm and alive, as if the universe was listening. As I parked outside Romano's, the restaurant's familiar glow felt different, charged with possibility. Mr. Romano waved from the counter, his smile curious, as if he sensed the change in me. The job offer in my purse was a talisman, its warmth a reminder of the fire within. Margaret's envelope with its deceptive butterflies was a weapon meant to destroy me. But I was ready, armed with a secret that would rewrite their narrative. The air pulsed, the shadows retreating, and I felt her, the woman from my dreams, standing beside me. Her presence a promise that I was no longer alone. The night of my 31st birthday arrived like a storm, gathering on the horizon, its promise of chaos both thrilling and terrifying. Romano's restaurant was alive with its usual warmth, golden light spilling from hanging lamps, the scent of garlic and fresh bread weaving through the air, the hum of laughter and clinking glasses, a familiar symphony. But tonight, the air carried a charge, a restless energy that made the shadows flicker, as if they knew a battle was coming. I wore my navy dress, its fabric shimmering like a midnight sky woven with stars, its fit a quiet armor against the storm I sensed brewing. My purse slung over my shoulder held the folded job offer from Grand Plaza Hotel, its warmth against my side, a talisman of my secret power. The fire in my chest burned steady, a beacon, guiding me through the darkness of what was to come. Margaret had insisted on the corner booth, the one I usually served, now transformed into a stage for her performance. She arrived first, her presence commanding the room like a queen claiming her court. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant updo, her cream-colored dress pristine, but her eyes held a glint I'd come to recognize sharp, predatory, like a hawk circling its prey. David followed his suit crisp, but his smile strained his phone already in hand, as if it were an extension of his body. Emma trailed behind her red dress, bold, her smirk a blade she didn't bother to sheathe. They moved with a coordinated precision, their glances darting between each other, a silent script I wasn't meant to read. The air around them shimmered faintly, a distortion that made my skin prickle, as if their intent was weaving a spell into the fabric of the night. Jennifer, dear Margaret, said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt like poison. She stood to embrace me, her air kisses missing my cheeks, a ritual of false warmth. Happy birthday. We're so thrilled to celebrate you here. The word here carried a barb, a reminder of her disdain for Romanos. But I smiled, my lips steady, my eyes meeting hers without flinching. The restaurant's hum seemed to quiet the air, pulsing with a strange energy, as if the walls themselves were watching, waiting for the moment I'd been preparing for. We sat the booth's red vinyl, creaking under us, the table set with a centerpiece of roses that seemed too perfect, their petals almost glowing in the lamplight. David's phone rested on the table, its camera angled toward me, a silent sentinel ready to capture my reaction. Emma's fingers hovered over her own phone, her nails tapping a rhythm that felt like a countdown. The other diners faded into the background, their voices a distant murmur, as if the room was narrowing to this moment, this confrontation. I felt the fire in my chest flare, a warmth that spread to my fingertips, steadying me. The woman from my dreams, the one with glowing hands and a shadow that stretched across cities, flashed in my mind, her presence a whisper, "You are ready." Margaret played her part flawlessly, her chatter light and performative, asking about my day, complimenting my dress with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. David joined in his laughter, forced his eyes flicking to his mother as if seeking approval. Emma was quieter, her smirk a constant, her phone ready to record the spectacle they'd planned. The waiter, Tony, my friend and ally, approached with menus, his grin warm but cautious, as if he sensed the tension. "Special night, Jennifer." He asked, his eyes searching mine. I nodded a silent pact. Passing between us, and the air around him shimmered as if Romano's itself was aligning with me. The meal progressed, plates of pasta and wine, arriving the conversation a careful dance around the truth. Margaret's questions grew pointed, probing my job search with feigned concern. "Any promising leads, dear?" she asked, her fork poised, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. I sipped my wine, the glass warm against my fingers, and smiled. "A few possibilities," I said, my voice calm, hiding the storm within. The air pulsed the shadows in the restaurant, shifting as if the room was holding its breath. Then came the moment they'd orchestrated. Margaret reached into her purse with a theatrical flourish, producing the pale pink envelope adorned with silver butterflies. It was the same envelope I'd seen 3 days ago, its shimmer more pronounced now, as if the butterflies were alive, their wings trembling with a secret malice. "We have a special gift for you," she announced, her voice loud enough to draw glances from nearby tables. She slid the envelope across the table, her smile a blade, her eyes locked on mine, daring me to crumble. David adjusted his phone, the camera's lens a cold eye, capturing my every move. Emma leaned forward, her phone ready, her smirk widening into a grin of triumph. The restaurant seemed to still the air thick with an electric charge, the shadows pooling darker around our booth. I took the envelope, my fingers brushing the paper, which felt warm, almost alive, as if it carried Margaret's intent like a curse. The butterflies seemed to flutter under my touch, their silver wings pulsing faintly, a warning of the venom within. I opened it, slowly, deliberately drawing out the moment my heart steady, despite the fire raging inside me. The papers slid out crisp and official, the words at the top unmistakable: petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers presented as a gift, meant to shatter me in the place I'd built my strength. Margaret leaned forward, her smile predatory, her voice a purr. "We thought this was the best gift we could give you," she said, her words dripping with false kindness. A chance to start fresh. David's camera remained steady, his face a mask of anticipation, while Emma's giggle was a sharp, discordant note in the silence. They expected tears, a collapse, a public humiliation to cement their narrative of my inadequacy. The other diners watched their curiosity await, but the air around me hummed a protective energy that seemed to shield me from their gaze. I looked at the papers, the ink stark against the white, and felt the fire in my chest surge a power I was only beginning to understand. The woman from my dreams stood beside me in my mind, her hands glowing, her voice a command, "Claim your moment." I reached for the pen they'd included, its weight heavy with their intent, and signed my name across the documents with a steady hand, the ink flowing like a river breaking free. The air crackled, the shadows retreating as if the act itself was a spell of liberation. Margaret's smile faltered a crack in her perfect facade. David's phone wavered, his confusion palpable. The camera catching a moment he hadn't scripted. Emma's giggle choked into silence, her eyes wide with disbelief. I folded the papers back into their cursed envelope. The butterflies, still now their shimmer dulled, as if my signature had broken their power. "Thank you," I said, my voice clear, carrying over the hum of the restaurant. "This is the greatest gift you could have given me. Freedom from a marriage that no longer serves me." Their faces froze the air around them, shimmering with a faint distortion, as if their plan was unraveling in the light of my defiance. I reached into my purse, my fingers finding the folded job offer its warmth, a counterpoint to their cold cruelty. "But I have a gift of my own." I continued, my voice steady, the fire within me blazing. I slid the Grand Plaza letter across the table, its letterhead gleaming under the lamplight, its words a testament to my worth. 3 days ago, I was offered a position as guest services coordinator at Grand Plaza Hotel. 45,000 a year, full benefits and housing. I start in 2 weeks. The restaurant erupted into sound not from them, but from the tables around us. Mr. Romano, standing by the counter, began to clap his weathered hands, a drumbeat of pride. Maria emerged from the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, her applause fierce and joyful. Tony joined in his grin, wide his claps echoing through the room. Regulars, Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Chin, the old couple by the window, stood their applause, a wave of support, their faces alight with recognition. The air glowed, a golden shimmer enveloping the room, as if Romano's itself was celebrating my victory. Margaret's face was a mask of shock, her mouth open, her eyes darting as if searching for a way to rewrite the moment. David's phone dropped to the table, his hands trembling, the camera forgotten. Emma's smirk was gone. Her phone slipping from her fingers, her face pale as if she'd seen a ghost. The butterflies on the envelope lay still, their shimmer extinguished, as if my triumph had stripped them of their power. The air pulsed, the shadows retreating entirely, and I felt her, the woman from my dreams, standing beside me, her presence a warm glow, her voice a whisper. "You are enough." I stood, my purse light against my shoulder, the job offer a beacon of my new beginning. "Thank you for showing me who you really are," I said, my voice calm but resonant, carrying the weight of my reclaimed power. "I'll take it from here." I turned to leave, the applause following me, a chorus of validation from the people who'd seen my true worth. Tony caught my eye, his nod one of pride, while Maria's smile was a blessing. Mr. Romano stepped forward, his hand on my shoulder. "You're unstoppable, Jennifer," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The restaurant glowed brighter, its walls humming as if sealing my triumph in its memory. As I stepped into the night, the air outside was crisp, alive with possibility. The stars above seemed brighter, their light pulsing in rhythm with the fire in my chest. I glanced back at the restaurant, its windows glowing like a beacon, and saw Margaret, David, and Emma still seated, their faces small and defeated in the booth. They'd meant to break me to stage my humiliation, but they'd only set me free. The woman from my dreams walked beside me in my mind, her shadow vast, her hands glowing with a light I was beginning to claim as my own. The night hummed, the world shifting, and I knew this was only the beginning. The night of my 31st birthday marked a fracture in my life, a moment where the world split into before and after. As I stepped out of Romano's, the cool air of the night wrapped around me like a cloak, the stars above pulsing with a rhythm that matched the fire in my chest. The applause from the restaurant, Mr. Romano's proud claps, Maria's fierce grin, Tony's infectious cheer echoed in my ears a chorus of validation that drowned out the memory of Margaret's venomous smile. The divorce papers signed and returned to their butterfly-adorned prison were no longer a weapon, but a key unlocking a future I'd only dared to dream. The air shimmered a faint golden glow trailing me as I walked to my car, as if the universe itself was celebrating my liberation. 2 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel, my new home 3 hours from the house that had caged me. The lobby was a cathedral of elegance marble floors, gleaming under crystal chandeliers, their light casting prisms that danced like spirits on the walls. My suitcase was small, containing only essentials, but the job offer in my purse felt heavy with promise, its paper warm, as if infused with the same energy that had guided me through the darkness. The employee residential building was a modern tower, a short walk away, and my furnished apartment on the 7th floor was a sanctuary of clean lines and soft whites, its windows overlooking a city that pulsed with possibility. The air in the apartment hummed a soft vibration that felt like a welcome, as if the space itself recognized my arrival as a homecoming. I unpacked, slowly hanging my navy dress in the closet, its fabric still shimmering like a piece of the night sky. The mirror in the bedroom reflected a woman I barely recognized. Not the diminished Jennifer of David's house, but someone stronger, her eyes bright with a spark that seemed almost otherworldly. The woman from my dreams, the one with glowing hands and a shadow that stretched across cities, appeared in my mind her nod, a silent affirmation. This is yours. I reclaimed my maiden name, Jennifer Lane, signing it on the lease with a flourish, the pen warm in my hand as if sealing a pact with my new self. The air pulsed, the shadows softening, and I felt a surge of power, a fire that burned brighter with every step I took into this new life. My first day at Grand Plaza was a whirlwind of introductions and training. Jessica Martinez. My manager was as warm in person as she'd been on the phone, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun, her eyes kind but sharp with expectation. "You'll fit right in," she said, guiding me through the hotel's bustling corridors. "Your experience at Romano's is exactly what we need, someone who can read people, handle pressure, and make guests feel valued." Her words were a balm healing wounds Margaret had carved with her disdain. The training room was bright, its windows framing the city skyline, and as I took notes, the paper felt warm, the air humming with a quiet energy, as if the hotel itself was watching approving. The role of guest services coordinator was demanding but exhilarating. I checked in, guests resolved complaints, and coordinated with housekeeping and concierge teams. My days a blur of activity that felt purposeful, meaningful. My colleagues were a diverse group, some career hospitality workers, others young professionals like me, all united by a shared pride in their work. Unlike David's family, they didn't measure worth by degrees or titles. They valued competence, warmth, and resilience. My first week, I diffused a heated complaint from a guest whose reservation had been lost my calm voice and quick thinking earning a nod from Jessica. "You're a natural," she said, and the air around her shimmered as if her praise was a spell of affirmation. The hotel's walls seemed to hum in agreement, their energy a quiet support that bolstered my confidence. Within 3 months, I was promoted to assistant manager of guest services, my salary climbing to $50,000 with a clear path to a management role. Jessica called me into her office, her smile wide. "Your ability to connect with guests and lead the team is remarkable," she said, handing me a new contract. The paper was warm, its ink gleaming as if it carried the weight of my triumph. I signed it, my hand steady, the fire in my chest blazing brighter. The office air pulsed the skyline outside, glowing with a golden light as if the city itself was celebrating my ascent. By my 6th month, I was a full manager, my salary nearing 60,000 dulos, my name, on a plaque in the lobby, a testament to my worth. The hotel felt alive, its corridors humming with a warmth that mirrored the fire within me, as if it had chosen me as much as I had chosen it. The news of my success spread a quiet ripple that reached the ears of Margaret's circle. Linda, a family friend who frequented the country club, visited Grand Plaza for a conference and recognized me at the front desk. "Jennifer, is that you?" she asked, her eyes wide with surprise. "You're running this place." Her tone was genuine, free of the condescension I'd endured at family gatherings. I smiled, guiding her through check-in. My professionalism, a shield and a sword. "I'm managing guest services," I said, my voice calm but proud. The air shimmered, the lobby's chandeliers, casting prisms that danced around us as if amplifying my triumph. Linda's report reached Margaret, and I later learned her recounting of my success, a thorn in the older woman's carefully curated narrative. The thought of Margaret's discomfort was a quiet satisfaction, not vengeance, but justice delivered by my own hand. The divorce proceedings were swift and surprisingly smooth. David's attorney was unprepared for the evidence I'd gathered, not just the signed papers from that night, but a video from Romano's security footage capturing his and Emma's attempt to record my humiliation. The footage provided by Mr. Romano, with a knowing smile, showed their phones aimed at me, their faces alight with anticipation, only to fall into shock as I turned their weapon against them. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, reviewed the video with a frown. "This behavior suggests a pattern of emotional coercion." She said her words a validation of the pain I'd endured. The settlement favored me a modest sum from our joint savings, enough to secure my new life. The courtroom air hummed, the papers warm under my fingers, as if the universe itself was sealing my freedom. David called once, his voice hesitant, tinged with regret. "I didn't know it would go this far." He said, his words hollow. "Mom thought it was best for us." I listened, the phone warm against my ear, the air shimmering with a faint distortion, as if his betrayal was unraveling in the space between us. "You chose her narrative over me," I said, my voice steady, the fire within me unwavering. "I've chosen myself now." I hung up the silence that followed to release the shadows in my apartment, softening as if in approval. Emma sent a text, a half-hearted apology that reeked of self-preservation, but I didn't respond. Their voices no longer had power over me. Margaret's silence was the loudest of all. Linda's reports, coupled with whispers from other family friends who'd visited Grand Plaza, painted a picture she couldn't ignore. At a country club event, I heard from a mutual acquaintance Margaret had tried to dismiss my success, claiming I'd lucked into the job. But her words fell flat, her friend's curiosity about my new life, a quiet rebuke. The air in my apartment pulsed when I heard this, the mirror reflecting a woman whose eyes glowed with a light I was beginning to claim as my own. The woman from my dreams appeared again, her hands radiant, her shadow vast, her voice a whisper. "They cannot touch you now." My life at Grand Plaza blossomed. I built friendships with colleagues, their laughter a contrast to the cold silences of David's family. Jessica became a mentor, guiding me through management training with a warmth that felt like family. Guests left reviews praising my professionalism, my name a quiet legend in the hotel's guest book. The city embraced me, its skyline a canvas of possibility, its lights pulsing in rhythm with the fire in my chest. I enrolled in evening classes again, not out of necessity, but desire studying hospitality management to solidify my place in this world. The classroom air hummed the textbooks warm under my fingers, as if they recognized my hunger to grow. At night, I'd stand on my apartment's balcony, the city sprawling below its lights, a constellation of dreams realized. The air was alive, a soft hum that felt like a promise, as if the universe was whispering back. The woman from my dreams no longer appeared. She didn't need to. Her strength was mine now, her fire burning steadily within me, a power I'd claimed through every rejection, every step, every triumph. The mirror in my bedroom reflected a woman who stood tall, her shadow stretching long, her eyes glowing with a light that was both human and something more. Margaret's gift of divorce had meant to break me, but it had only set me free. The shadows of their judgment no longer reached me, their voices drowned out by the hum of my new life. I was Jennifer Lane Manager Survivor, a woman whose fire could not be extinguished. And as I looked out over the city, the air pulsing with possibility, I knew this was only the beginning. I stood on the balcony of my apartment at Grand Plaza, the city sprawling below like a tapestry of stars woven into the earth. The night air was cool alive with a soft hum that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the fire in my chest, a fire that had grown from a spark into a steady flame, no longer just a dream, but a power I claimed as my own. The skyline glowed, its lights shimmering as if whispering back, affirming the journey that had brought me here. The woman from my dreams, the one with glowing hands and a shadow that stretched across cities, had faded, her presence no longer needed, for I had become her. Margaret's gift of divorce, wrapped in that cursed pink envelope with its trembling butterflies, was meant to shatter me, to cement her narrative of my inadequacy. Instead, it had been a key, unlocking a strength I hadn't known I possessed. The air around me pulsed the shadows of my past, retreating as if the universe itself had conspired to set me free. I thought of Romano's, where Mr. Romano Maria and Tony had seen my worth when my own family had not. Of Grand Plaza, where Jessica's faith had given me wings. Of the city whose lights now sang of possibility. Their support, their belief had been the kindling for my fire, but the flame was mine alone. The lesson was clear, etched into my bones like a spell. My worth was not defined by their judgment, but by the life I built, the strength I claimed. Margaret, David, and Emma had tried to dim my light, but their cruelty only illuminated my path. The air hummed the balcony, warm beneath my feet, as if the world itself was sealing this truth. I was Jennifer Lane, no longer a shadow, but a beacon, my shadow stretching long and powerful, my hands glowing with a light that was both human and something more. As I turned back to my apartment, the mirror by the door caught my reflection, a woman radiant, her eyes alight with purpose. The city's hum followed me inside a quiet promise that this was only the beginning. I had faced betrayal and risen stronger, my fire unquenchable, my future boundless. With a smile, I stepped into the warmth of my new life, ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing I carried the light to face it all.